an atheist who wants to talk about issues and doubts about a moral system of utilitarianism. Autumn.
Yeah, so I was raised at least as like a pretty liberal Protestant, but pretty quickly I sort of realized it didn't really make a lot of sense with the mythology. So I moved away from that. And I've pretty much been like an atheist for about 10 years. About 4 years ago, I sort of got into philosophy and discovered utilitarianism. And I sort of latched onto that. Um, so there's a lot of like sort of hypothetical problems with it, like sort of the one where there's a person, there's like one healthy person, there's five people who need different organs, and you could like cut up the per one person to save the five people. And I've got
Right.
past like a lot of the ones like that, but there's this one issue that I'm stuck on, which is like you could achieve theoretically at least like maximum happiness for a person by just keeping them on like a psychoactive drug drip or maybe in some sort of like matrix like VR world.
Sure.
And like logically speaking through my moral system, that almost seems like it would be the desirable outcome if that truly is the best, most happy state. But like intuitively, of course, that feels wrong. And the only
Right.
defense I have when someone brings that up is, well, that's not maximum happiness, which feels like really weak and almost like sort of deflecting. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Sure. Is happiness the end all beat all goal of morality?
Hmm. I guess that kind of strikes at the heart of my moral system because I would say yes. I feel like saying whatever the goal is like inherently arbitrary, but I think happiness is the good thing to strive for. I kind of view it as
Okay.
sort of the meaning of, or at least one meaning of my life.
Whose happiness?
I would say of like moral agents in particular, but I guess to keep it simple, we can just say like human beings.
So then you're saying that you're trying to maximize happiness for the most amount of people possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And what if take it away from a psychoactive dripping, whatever, take a real world example. This large group of people wants this small group of people dead. They would be more happy if more of these people over here died and there's more of them than there are of the small group. Is genocide now moral?
I would say no. I would say that because like that genocide doesn't do anything to materially help the like large group of people, and
Certainly
it's
it does.
Sure,
The
it
large
does.
group
More
of people now
resources.
exactly. The large group now has more living space and they have more resources and they have all these free clothes and lots of tasty human meat and all sorts of things. And they feel superior, which makes them very happy.
that's true. I mean, I could argue against the feel superior, but at least in terms of the resource, like the conquering of resources, that is a pretty legitimate dilemma. Um, I would
Yep.
I would say I kind of solved that in the same way as like the scenario I described with the five people who need organs, by introducing a little bit of like Kantian ethics by saying that you can't use people as a means. So I would say like you can't kill those small group of people for the purpose of like making the large group of people happier. That would just be
Okay.
using them
Then
as a
we go
means.
to your going to your analogy of talking about like, could we not have somebody on a psychoactive drip? The person controlling that drip is the means then.
Uh, okay. Um, okay, but I guess that works for the psychoactive drip. But what about like a person who's say in like the Matrix in some sort of VR fantasy land? You don't
What
necessarily
about them?
need a person to be the means for that.
But so if this thing isn't controlled by a person, then is it moral because the person in the simulation is happier?
Well, right. Like if the person is like somehow achieving their maximum happiness living in the VR world, is it then moral to just keep them like in the VR world? That is sort of the dilemma.
Uh, I wouldn't say
So,
so, but who knows?
Autumn, does your ethical system have any kind of time frame involved, or is it all just
I would
immediate?
say no, it definitely is considering like the future. So yeah, like I would say that like it's immoral to for example, I don't know, like do methamphetamine, even if it makes you feel good in the moment, it's going to do more harm in the future.
Right. So
I disagree on
are
that too.
would you agree then that you have some flavor? You're using happiness, and I think it's weirding both of us out. Can we use the word flourishing? Does flourishing encompass what you would want to say
Yeah, I
that
think
we are in?
Into flourishing.
Okay. So
I
flourishing,
think that works.
would
Yeah.
you agree? Would you agree that for a cooperative system, for social species like we have, that you require a balance both of group flourishing and individual flourishing? Or do you think that we can do one
Yeah.
at the expense of the other? Okay, so yeah, so if
I
you
think
had a
like
whole group,
different people, yeah, different people require like a different balance, but I'd say like for overall, for the vast majority of people, they need some amount of balance.
I think you would agree that you wouldn't say that a whole country is happy when every individual in the country is unhappy, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you also, just because there's a handful of people who are flourishing, that doesn't mean that the whole group is flourishing.
Right.
Okay,
Welcome to
so
socialism.
you would so in principle you agree.
Oh, don't worry, I'm already there.
Yeah, and so we're all actually in agreement on this call. So but in principle you would agree that there's always going to be push and pull against what an individual wants versus what the group needs, and that there's never going to be a perfect. We, on a macro scale, we're lucky because it kind of works itself out, right? When Germany goes a little bit crazy, the rest of the world goes, oh, whoa, 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 hold on there. That maybe isn't on a macro scale. We're going to say, hey, you know what? Calm down. So that when you talk about an individual, like when you talk about an individual, is it good if that individual goes into a happiness coma? The answer is maybe that's good for that person. I think it's always good in ethics. At least I would teach my children. What would happen if when you're trying to make a moral decision, you sometimes need to think about what would happen if everyone did this. So, like, is it immoral for me to, steal bread to feed my family? Maybe not. But what if everyone just stole bread? How would that work? So you do need to sometimes take those little small decisions and make them larger, and it's all fuzzy and weird as far as I'm like it gets contentious because you have different people with different goals. So can we at least agree that you a system of ethics based on what going to be good for an individual is unlikely to translate well?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, like that you have to consider not just like your own happiness and your own desires, but also like other people's, and that you need to consider, well, if I'm taking this action, is it okay for somebody else to do the same, and what happens if they do? I'm definitely with you there.
And then you also have to then cross that over time, right? You need to actually cross that over. What's 6 generations down the road going to be like if I take this action? If you want to get really advanced in your ethics, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's lots of variables, and I don't remember what my point was, other than to say that if we're talking about that as a utilitarian, as a moral system, I don't think it works because I don't think it scales.
I'm also just not a utilitarian, so like I don't know, man. But like, yeah, I think there's a lot there, and like the fact of the matter is, like, you seem like a reasonable enough person, and so like there's gonna be different philosophies and different ideals and different schools of thought that are all going to try to get you to the right place. As long as you're trying to make humanity better and trying to make as many people happy and be as little of a dick as you possibly can be, I think you're on the right track. It just bothers me to try to say, well, it's all about maximal happiness, because there's lots of people that can be, it is demonstrated repeatedly throughout history that happiness does not mean justice. Happiness does not mean progress. Happiness does not mean good or moral in any real way. You can make somebody very happy by doing very evil things. And depending on how that person is raised and indoctrinated, they can be happy doing evil things too. You don't have to be a sociopath. You just have to be taught this group over here is lesser than, and you'll do fucking all sorts of shit. And so like, I don't think it's a good idea to base any moral system in a unitarian. I keep trying to call you Unitarian. Like as a utilitarian framework. I just don't think it's productive, and I think it's at risk of doing a slippery slope fallacy. It just leaves the door open for too much shit. But you're asking good questions, and I think you should continue doing so.
Okay. Thank you both very much. Also, if I could ask, what are your moral systems, or just like, I guess, moral philosophies shortly, if I can look into them?
I don't know the name because I'm not a philosophy face, but I, philosophically speaking, like my jam, I really love cosmic nihilism and I really love ancient stoicism. And when you put those together, you get a framework that's all about personal responsibility and absurdity and acknowledging that nothing really matters. So you got to make the world what the best you can because nobody else is going to do it. And thankless labor to better humanity. I don't know what that's called morally. I just think that it's the best way to be a good person. Also, I'm not a capitalist.
Yeah, I'm not a philosopher. I don't do all the philosophy labels. So mine currently, but it's always reconstructing itself. I think we should maximize flourishing and minimize suffering. And that I feel like the more beings that you include in your consideration, the more moral you are.
Yeah, that's the long and short of it. Inclusivity is a big deal. All right, Autumn, I really appreciate you waiting so long to talk to us. I hope that what we said was useful or coherent.
Or entertaining or something.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I've been waiting
awesome.
Probably like 2 months off and on trying to call in. So it's been great talking to you too. Thank you very much.
Sorry you got us.
Thanks, Autumn.
Thanks so much, Autumn. Take care. Bye. She was fun.